Queen Vazhara of the Miktari Confederation stood motionless on her observation deck, 6 slender arms crossed in various positions of displeasure. The royal blue scales covering her elongated head caught the purple light of the twin suns, creating an intimidating shimmer that rippled down to her ceremonial battle armor. She gazed out at the endless stars, wondering which one had claimed her daughter. "Your Majesty," came the nervous voice of diplomat Cruxer from behind her. "The Council awaits your decision on the human prisoners." "Let them wait," she replied, not bothering to turn around. Her voice carried the distinctive rasp that all Miktari royalty possessed, like sandpaper wrapped in silk. "What's another hour to beings who will spend their remaining cycles in our labor camps?" Cruxer cleared his throat, an annoying habit he had picked up from studying the humans. "Actually, Your Majesty, that's what we need to discuss. The Galactic Union has requested clemency for the captives. They're calling it a gesture of goodwill." The Queen spun around, her tail lashing against the transparent aluminum viewing port with a crack that made Cruxer flinch. "Goodwill? The humans vaporized our research station in the Kalos Nebula. They shot down Princess Nezura's diplomatic vessel. My daughter." Her voice caught, and for a moment the fearsome queen of the most powerful empire in the quadrant looked vulnerable. "Yes, Your Majesty. However, new intelligence suggests that rogue elements within our own military may have fired first. The humans might have been responding to propaganda." Queen Vazhara hissed, stalking forward on her 4 powerful legs. "Human lies. They've infiltrated the Union Council, just as I warned." The palace alert system suddenly blared to life, startling both royalty and diplomat. The Queen's inner membranes slid protectively over her eyes as the lights shifted to battle red. "What now?" she snarled. General Pictaz burst through the doors, his normally immaculate uniform disheveled. "Your Majesty, an unidentified vessel has breached our defense perimeter. It's broadcasting Princess Nezura's royal signature." The Queen froze. "Impossible. My daughter is dead. The signature is authentic, Your Majesty. We've run every verification protocol." For the first time in decades, Queen Vazhara felt something dangerous stir in her chest. Hope was the most treacherous emotion for a ruler who had survived 17 assassination attempts and 3 galactic wars. "Bring the ship in," she commanded, her voice unnaturally steady. "Maximum security protocols. If this is some human trick." "There's more," General Pictaz said, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "The vessel is of human design, and the princess is not alone. The royal landing bay could accommodate warships capable of destroying small moons, but today it held only a battered human transport vessel, barely larger than a shuttle." Queen Vazhara observed from behind a phalanx of elite guards, her posture rigid with tension. The ship's ramp descended with a mechanical groan, and the assembled Miktari guards raised their pulse rifles. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, a figure appeared at the top of the ramp. Princess Nezura stood tall, her purple scales gleaming even under the harsh landing bay lights. She wore a patchwork of Miktari ceremonial armor and what appeared to be modified human tactical gear. One of her 6 arms was missing below the elbow, replaced by a mechanical prosthetic of unmistakably human design. Beside her stood a human male, average height for their kind, with dark skin and a close-cropped head of curly black hair. He wore what looked like a pilot's uniform, modified to accommodate the different atmospheric needs of his companion. Most alarmingly, he stood close to the princess, too close for a prisoner, or even a servant. "Mother," Princess Nezura called, her voice carrying the same raspy quality as the Queen's. "I have returned, with explanations and complications." Queen Vazhara stepped forward, ignoring her security details' protests. "Nezura, is it truly you?" The princess descended the ramp, the human following slightly behind. Up close, the Queen could see the changes in her daughter. One eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant. Scars crisscrossed her scales in patterns that told stories of survival against impossible odds. "It's me, Mother, though not entirely as I left." The queen fought the urge to embrace her daughter. Such displays were not the Miktari way, especially before subordinates. Instead, she pressed her forehead briefly against her daughter's, their scales making a soft clicking sound as they touched. "And this?" she asked, gesturing to the human with undisguised suspicion. The princess straightened her spine, all 6 arms 5 natural, 1 mechanical, held in the formal posture of royal declaration. "Mother, council members, military leaders of the Miktari Confederation. I present to you Tomas Wilson, captain of the Earth Alliance Rescue Division." She paused, seemingly gathering courage. "My life bond partner." The stunned silence that followed was so complete that the soft hum of the landing bay's force fields seemed deafening in comparison. "What?" The queen's question came out as a dangerous whisper. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," Princess Nezura suggested, eyeing the increasingly restless guards. The human Tomas finally spoke. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, we've traveled across 27 systems dodging both Miktari and human patrols to bring you critical information. Information that could end this pointless war." The queen's inner eyelids flicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "You dare address me directly, human?" "I dare because I've earned that right," he replied without flinching. "I pulled your daughter from the wreckage of her ship when my own commanders ordered me to leave the area. I helped her evade capture by both our peoples for 3 years. And I've witnessed firsthand who's really behind this conflict." General Pictaz moved forward, hand on his ceremonial blade. "Your Majesty, allow me to remove this insolent creature." "Wait," the queen commanded, studying the human's face. Despite their alien features, she had learned to read human expressions during the early diplomatic years. This one showed no fear, only determination and something else when he glanced at her daughter. "Take them to the secure briefing chamber. Full scan for weapons and communication devices." As they were escorted away, Queen Vazhara noticed something that disturbed her even more than her daughter's declaration. Princess Nezura had moved protectively closer to the human when the guards approached, her posture reflecting the instinctive defensive stance of a Miktari protecting their young or their mate. "The Synthar Collective," Princess Nezura explained, projecting a holographic star map showing territories far beyond Miktari or human space. "They've been manipulating both our civilizations for decades." The queen, seated at the head of the briefing table, narrowed her eyes. "The Synthar are a myth, a boogeyman story told to scare younglings." "That's what they want everyone to believe," Tomas said, pointing to specific coordinates on the map. "These aren't random pirate attacks or rogue military actions. They're calculated strikes designed to escalate tensions between humans and Miktari." Queen Vazhara tapped her claws against the polished stone table. "And I'm supposed to believe this because a human pilot says so? The same humans who have been encroaching on our territory for years." "Not just because I say so," Tomas replied, pulling a data crystal from his pocket, "but because of this." Princess Nezura took the crystal and inserted it into the briefing room's secured terminal. "We infiltrated a Synthar communication hub in the Viridian Expanse. These are unaltered transmission logs between Synthar operatives and their agents within both our governments. The displays filled with transmission data, encryption codes, and most damningly, visual evidence of meetings between shadowy figures and recognizable officials from both human and Miktari administrations." "High Counselor Drazix," the queen murmured, recognizing one of her most trusted advisors in animated conversation with an entity whose features seemed to shift and distort. "This can't be." "The Synthar are shapeshifters, Mother. Not metaphorically, literally. They can assume the appearance of both our species. They've been replacing key individuals, sometimes for years at a time. Which is why," Tomas added, "the war has followed such an illogical pattern. Diplomatic ships attacked, peaceful research outposts targeted. Actions designed not for military advantage but maximum emotional impact. Maximum outrage." The queen's mind raced, reassessing the events of the past 5 years through this new lens. To what end? What do these Synthar gain from our conflict? Resource depletion. Princess Nezura said grimly. Territory abandonment. Both our civilizations have been withdrawing from valuable systems as we consolidate our forces around core worlds. Systems the Synthar have been quietly moving into. And there's something else, Tomas said, his voice dropping lower. Something we only discovered recently. The Synthar don't just want our territories. They feed on conflict itself, the emotional energy of sentient beings in distress. The more we fight, the stronger they become. Queen Vazhara stood abruptly, pacing the room on her 4 legs, tail swishing in agitation. Even if I believed this fantastic tale, what would you have me do? Announce to our people that we've been manipulated by mythical creatures? That their sons and daughters died for nothing? Not for nothing, Princess Nezura said firmly. And for truth. We need to expose the Synthar agents in both our governments simultaneously. Force them to reveal themselves. And then form an alliance with the humans? The Queen asked incredulously. The same humans our people have been taught to hate for generations. Tomas stepped forward, his expression earnest. Your Majesty, 3 years ago, I thought all Miktari were cold-blooded killers with too many limbs and not enough compassion. Then I spent 3 years hiding in cargo holds, abandoned space stations, and wilderness planets with your daughter. I learned she's stubborn, has a terrible singing voice, and makes this weird clicking sound when she sleeps. Tomas. Princess Nezura interjected, her scales darkening in the Miktari equivalent of a blush. But I also learned she's brilliant, loyal, and braver than anyone I've ever known, he continued. Our peoples aren't that different. We've just never had the chance to really see each other. The Queen stared at him, then at her daughter. And this partnership between you two, it's not some political arrangement? Princess Nezura moved to stand beside Tomas, their arms one human, one Miktari touching. It was unexpected, Mother. Believe me, no one was more surprised than I was. But after he rescued me, after we realized we couldn't return to either of our peoples without being labeled traitors, something happened. Something happened, the Queen repeated flatly. That's your explanation for bonding with a being who has half the proper number of limbs and no scales whatsoever? Tomas actually laughed, a sound rarely heard in the royal chambers. Trust me, Your Majesty, I had similar thoughts about falling for someone with a tail and blue scales. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Before Queen Vazhara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. General Piktas burst through the doors, his expression frantic. Your Majesty, we have multiple security breaches throughout the palace. Councillor Drazix has released the human prisoners, and they're attacking the eastern quadrant. The Queen's eyes darted to the security feeds displayed on the chamber walls. What she saw chilled her royal blood. The supposedly imprisoned humans weren't attacking, they were being herded toward the palace's central reactor by Miktari guards, whose movements seemed oddly jerky and uncoordinated. That's not Drazix, Princess Nezura said urgently. Not anymore. And those aren't regular human prisoners. Look at their eyes. On the magnified security feed, the Queen could see it now, the 2 perfect symmetrical movements, the blank expressions, and most telling, the strange shimmer in their eyes when they passed under certain lights. Synthar puppets, Tomas explained grimly. They take over neural functions first, before the full physical transformation. They're going to sabotage your reactor, make it look like a human terrorist attack. The perfect excuse to escalate the war to full-scale genocide. Queen Vazhara made a decision. For the first time in her long reign, she removed her ceremonial armor, revealing the battle scars of her youth. General Piktas, initiate Palace Lockdown Protocol Omega-7. No one enters or leaves until I personally countermand the order. She turned to her daughter and the human. You too, with me. Where are we going? Tomas asked as they hurried from the chamber. The Queen's expression was grim determination personified. Into the royal armory. If these Synthar want to infiltrate my palace and threaten my people, they're about to learn why the name Vazhara is whispered with fear across 3 galactic spirals. Princess Nezura smiled, a fierce expression that reminded the queen of herself in younger days. "Just like old times, mother." "Not quite," Queen Vazhara replied, sparing a glance at Tomas. "The company's stranger this time around. Let's hope your human can fight as well as he talks." Tomas grinned, an expression the queen found strangely infectious. "Just try to keep up, Your Majesty. I've been fighting alongside your daughter for 3 years. I've picked up a few tricks." As they raced through the palace corridors toward what would undoubtedly be a dangerous confrontation, Queen Vazhara found herself in the unprecedented position of placing her trust in a human. All because her daughter, her supposedly dead daughter, had returned with not just an ally from an enemy species, but a life partner. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor indeed. Queen Vazhara hadn't personally wielded a pulse rifle in over 40 cycles, but her claws remembered. The weapon hummed to life with a satisfying whine as she calibrated it to her genetic signature. "These are Miktari Royal Guard weapons," she explained, tossing a smaller rifle to Tomas. "They'll only fire for authorized users. I'm temporarily adding your biometrics to the approved database." Tomas caught the weapon with practiced ease. "Fancy. On Earth, we just use trigger locks." "Primitive," Princess Nezura commented, selecting her own arsenal from the royal armory walls. "But charming in its simplicity, like most human things." "I'll take that as a compliment," Tomas replied, examining the alien weapon. "Though I'm pretty sure you meant it as an insult." The queen watched their banter with bewilderment. There was an easy familiarity between them that spoke of shared dangers and mutual trust. Something she had never expected to see between a Miktari royal and a human. "If you two are finished flirting," she interrupted, "perhaps we could focus on the shape-shifting infiltrators trying to start an interstellar war." Princess Nezura's scales flushed a deeper blue. "Right. The Synthar have weaknesses. Their mimicry isn't perfect. Under certain frequencies of ultraviolet light, their cellular structure becomes visible. Which is why we brought these," Tomas added, pulling 3 pairs of specialized goggles from his pack. "Modified human mining equipment. They'll let us see the Synthar's true form, even when they're masquerading as Miktari or humans." The queen reluctantly donned the ungainly human technology. Through the goggles, the world took on a purplish tinge, with certain objects glowing more intensely than others. "We need to reach the central reactor before they can sabotage it," she said, leading them toward a concealed door at the back of the armory. "This passage will take us through the service tunnels, fewer guards to encounter or Synthar to impersonate them." As they hurried through the narrow maintenance corridors, the queen glanced at her daughter. 3 years, Nezura. 3 years I believed you dead. I couldn't risk contacting you, mother. Not until we had proof. The Synthar have operatives everywhere. Any transmission could have been intercepted. And this human, he's truly your chosen one." The queen couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Tomas, walking ahead, pretended not to hear, but his shoulders tensed slightly. "His name is Tomas," Princess Nezura said firmly. "And yes, he saved my life when his own commanders ordered him to abandon the area. He defied direct orders, risked court-martial, and eventually became branded a traitor to humanity, all for me." The queen considered this a noble sentiment, but hardly practical for the heir to the Miktari throne. "What offspring could you possibly produce, mother?" Princess Nezura hissed, her embarrassment evident. "This really isn't the time." Tomas glanced back, an amused expression on his face. "You know, Your Majesty, on Earth we usually wait until at least the 3rd family dinner before discussing reproductive capabilities." "Fascinating," the queen replied dryly. "On Miktar, potential royal consorts undergo genetic compatibility testing before they're even allowed in the same room as a princess." "How romantic," Tomas muttered. A distant explosion rocked the tunnel, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. "They've reached the secondary cooling systems," the queen said grimly. "We need to hurry." The central reactor chamber was a massive space dominated by the pulsing blue core that powered the entire palace complex. Under normal circumstances, it would be staffed by at least 20 technicians. Today it was eerily empty save for 3 figures hunched over the main control panel. Through her modified goggles, Queen Vazhara could see the truth. Though they appeared to be 2 Miktari technicians and 1 human prisoner, their forms wavered under the specialized lenses, revealing elongated limbs and strangely fluid bodies beneath the disguise. "Synthar," she whispered, "just as you said." Princess Nezura nodded grimly. "They're altering the containment protocols. If that reactor goes critical, it will look like human sabotage. Your death would be the final spark needed to launch a full-scale human genocide. And once our civilizations have decimated each other, the Synthar move in to claim the spoils," Tomas added. "Neat and tidy." "Not if I have anything to say about it," the Queen growled. "Cover me." Before either could stop her, Queen Vazhara stepped into the open, her pulse rifle raised. "Step away from the controls, imposters." The 3 figures turned in unison, their movements too synchronized to be natural. The lead Synthar, wearing the appearance of High Counselor Drazix, smiled. "Ah, Your Majesty, so good of you to join us." His voice was perfect, the same pompous tone Drazix always used, but under the UV goggles, his face occasionally rippled like water. "I was concerned we might have to hunt you down." "The only hunting will be done by me," the Queen replied, her weapon aimed steadily. "I know what you are, Synthar." For a moment, Drazix's face registered surprise. Then he laughed, a sound that gradually shifted from Drazix's cultured chuckle to something inhuman, a wet, bubbling noise that raised the Queen's neck scales. "How fascinating. The lost princess returns, and suddenly the Queen knows all about the Synthar Collective." His gaze shifted to where Tomas and Nezura were partially concealed. "And she brings a pet human with her. How progressive of you, Your Majesty." Tomas stepped out, his own weapon raised. "We know all about your plan, manipulating both sides, feeding off the conflict. It ends today." The false Drazix smiled wider than any real Miktari could, his jaw literally extending beyond normal parameters. "You think you can stop what we've set in motion? The war has its own momentum now. Hatred has taken root. Even if you expose us, your peoples will find new reasons to destroy each other." Perhaps Queen Vazhara conceded, but they will do so with open eyes, not as puppets dancing to your strings. She fired without warning, her shot striking the Synthar disguised as a human prisoner. Instead of blood, the creature's chest erupted in a spray of iridescent fluid. It shrieked a sound no human or Miktari throat could produce and began to melt, its carefully maintained form dissolving into a writhing mass of tentacles and fluid sacs. The other 2 Synthar abandoned their disguises, their bodies flowing like quicksilver, as they launched themselves toward the royal party. Princess Nezura fired rapidly, her shots precise, despite her mechanical arm. Tomas rolled to one side, drawing the attention of the false Drazix, while the Queen targeted the 3rd infiltrator. "The reactor controls," Nezura shouted. "They've started the overload sequence." Tomas ducked under a lashing tentacle and sprinted toward the control panel. "I'll try to abort it. Keep them busy." With pleasure, the Queen snarled, switching her rifle to spread pattern and firing a volley that caught the nearest Synthar mid-transformation. The battle was chaotic and disorienting. The Synthar moved unlike any opponent the Queen had faced before, their bodies able to elongate, flatten, and reshape at will. Traditional combat tactics were useless against foes who could slip through narrow spaces or absorb what should have been killing blows. Their core is in the center mass. Princess Nezura called out, firing repeatedly at the pulsing heart of the creature she was battling. "Concentrate fire there." The Queen adjusted her aim, finding the rhythm of combat returning to her like an old friend. For all their shape-shifting abilities, the Synthar were vulnerable when forced to abandon their disguises. Their natural form was powerful but unstable, requiring constant energy to maintain. "I can't stop the overload," Tomas shouted from the control panel. "They've locked it with some kind of organic key." The false Drazix, now fully revealed as a towering mass of translucent flesh and glowing organs, laughed that horrible bubbling laugh again. Too late, little mammals. When this facility explodes, the Miktari will blame the humans. The humans will retaliate, and we will feast on your mutual destruction. Queen Vazhara caught her daughter's eye across the chamber. An unspoken plan passed between them, the kind of silent communication only possible between those who share royal blood. With a subtle nod, they began moving in tandem, herding the remaining Synthar toward the reactor core. Tomas, Princess Nezura called. Remember that mining station in the Kelvic asteroid belt? The human's eyes widened in understanding. You're not serious. That's insane. What other choice do we have? She shot back, continuing to drive the Synthar backward. Queen Vazhara, though not privy to their shared experience, understood the general plan. The containment field, she said. We can reverse it. Instead of containing the reactor energy, it contains the explosion, Tomas finished, his fingers flying over the control panel. Brilliant and suicidal. I'm beginning to see the family resemblance. The false Drazics, realizing their intention, let out a roar of rage and lunged toward Tomas. Queen Vazhara intercepted the creature, emptying her rifle into its central mass. The Synthar shrieked in pain but continued forward, tentacles lashing out to wrap around the queen's throat. Mother. Princess Nezura cried, abandoning her position to rush to the queen's aid. No, Queen Vazhara gasped. Complete the mission. That's a royal command. For a moment, Princess Nezura froze, torn between duty and family. Then, with visible anguish, she turned back to help Tomas. The queen struggled against the Synthar's grip, her royal training kicking in as she reached for the ceremonial dagger always hidden in her scale armor. She plunged it into what passed for the creature's eye, causing it to release her with a howl of pain. Got it, Tomas yelled triumphantly. Containment field reversed. We have 30 seconds before it activates. The exit. Princess Nezura pointed to the far side of the chamber. We won't make it in time. The queen, staggering to her feet, spotted an emergency pressure door nearby. There, the maintenance shaft. It has independent shielding. They ran, pulse fire still exchanging behind them as the remaining Synthar realized their plan. The countdown echoed through the chamber, a mechanical voice announcing their potential doom with infuriating calmness. 20 seconds to containment reversal. Tomas reached the door first, spinning the manual override wheel. It stuck. Princess Nezura joined him, adding her Miktari strength to his efforts. Slowly, agonizingly, the wheel began to turn. 10 seconds to containment reversal. The door swung open, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft. Tomas pushed Princess Nezura through first. 5 seconds. Queen Vazhara dove through the opening, rolling to make room for Tomas. 3, 2. Tomas leapt through, slamming the pressure door shut behind him, just as a blinding flash of light seeped through the seams, and followed by a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace. For several long moments, they lay in the darkness of the maintenance shaft, the only sound their ragged breathing. Then, gradually, emergency lights flickered on, bathing them in a dim red glow. Did it work? Princess Nezura asked, her voice hoarse. Tomas checked a small device strapped to his wrist. Radiation levels normal. The containment field held. The explosion was directed inward, not outward. And the Synthar? The queen asked. Vaporized, if we're lucky, he replied. Though I doubt we got all of them. Beings this infiltrated into both our governments won't be eliminated so easily. Queen Vazhara sat up, wincing at the various injuries she'd sustained. She studied her daughter and the human, both equally battered but alive. Something fundamental had shifted in her understanding of the universe. You make a surprisingly effective team, she admitted grudgingly. Princess Nezura smiled, leaning against Tomas. We've had plenty of practice. So it would seem. The queen sighed, her royal composure momentarily set aside. What happens now? Tomas looked at her seriously. Now comes the hard part, Your Majesty. Convincing two species who have spent years at war that they've been manipulated by a third party, and that they need to work together to root out the remaining Synthar infiltrators. The evidence we gathered. Princess Nezura began. Will help, the Queen acknowledged. But evidence alone rarely changes hearts. Fear and hatred are powerful emotions. So is hope, Tomas said quietly. And love. He glanced at Princess Nezura. If a human and a Miktari princess can overcome their differences, maybe there's hope for our civilizations. Queen Vazhara rose to her feet, once again the regal leader of the most powerful empire in the quadrant. Perhaps it will require a dramatic gesture, something to capture the imagination of both our peoples. Princess Nezura stood as well, helping Tomas up. What are you thinking, Mother? A royal wedding, the Queen said, watching their reactions carefully. The Princess of Miktari and a human hero who saved the Queen's life. Broadcast across every system in both our territories. Tomas blinked in surprise. Wait, you're actually approving our relationship? I'm being practical, the Queen replied, though a hint of warmth had crept into her typically cold tone. A political alliance sealed by a personal one. Ancient tradition, really. Princess Nezura narrowed her eyes suspiciously. And the fact that we actually love each other. A fortunate coincidence, Queen Vazhara said dismissively, though the slight upward curl of her mouth betrayed her. One that will make the performance more convincing. It's not a performance, Tomas insisted. Everything is a performance when you're royalty, human. You'll learn that soon enough. The Queen straightened her battle-damaged robes. But first we have a war to end and a conspiracy to expose. As they made their way through the maintenance tunnels toward the palace proper, Queen Vazhara found herself re-evaluating many things she had long held as absolute truth. The humans were not the barbaric invaders her council had painted them to be. The shape-shifting Synthar, long dismissed as myth, were terrifyingly real. And her daughter, her precious, presumed dead daughter, had found strength and even love in the most unlikely of places. The path ahead would be difficult. Exposing the Synthar infiltrators, convincing skeptical military leaders from both sides, and building a lasting peace between species who had been conditioned to hate each other. But as she watched Princess Nezura and Tomas walking ahead, supporting each other despite their injuries, Queen Vazhara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: optimism. You know, she said, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen among them, when this is over, we'll need to establish a joint task force to hunt down the remaining Synthar. Someone with experience dealing with both human and Miktari bureaucracy would make an excellent leader. Tomas glanced back at her, a smile spreading across his face. Is that a job offer, Your Majesty? Consider it a royal command, she replied dryly. After all, if you're going to be part of this family, you might as well make yourself useful. Princess Nezura laughed, a sound the Queen had feared she would never hear again. Be careful what you wish for, Mother. Tomas has some very UN Miktari ideas about royal protocol. I suspected as much, the Queen said, surprising herself with a small chuckle. But perhaps it's time for some new ideas. As they emerged into the palace proper, they were met by a chaotic scene of confused guards and frantic counselors. The three of them, Miktari Queen, Miktari Princess, and human pilot, stood together, united by shared danger and a common purpose. Queen Vazhara stepped forward, her regal authority silencing the panicked chatter. Attention, loyal subjects of the Miktari Confederation. I bring you grave news and new hope. Our war with humanity has been orchestrated by a hidden enemy. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in our history. In a deed. She reached out, taking her daughter's hand in one of her six, and after only a moment's hesitation, Tomas's hand in another. Today we stand together. Tomorrow we build peace. In that moment, with palace alarms still blaring and uncertainty looming on the horizon, Queen Vazhara understood what her daughter had discovered during those 3 lost years. Sometimes the most powerful alliances came from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, what appeared to be your greatest enemy was actually your greatest hope. The war wasn't over. The Synthar threat remained. But for the first time since Princess Nezura's ship had vanished in the darkness of space, Queen Vazhara felt the weight of the universe lighten ever so slightly on her royal shoulders. Perhaps these humans weren't so bad after all.